Hi, it's Maya here with the first part of my January wrap-up. In this video I will go through the books that I read during the first half of January, so that'll be from the 1st to the 15th. The first thing I read was a comic straight from the library, and that was Harrow County Volume 2, Twice Told, by Cullen Bunn and Tyler Crook. And this is a horror comic, and it continues the story from Volume 1 that I just picked up at random from the library and was very pleasantly surprised. So the main character is called Emmy, and she is now coming to terms with what she learned about herself and Harrow County's history in the first volume, and also she's forging a connection with the monsters in the forest. But then her lost sister, that she didn't even know she had, comes to visit and she has plans of her own. The plot line itself wasn't my favorite. It was pretty predictable, and this juxtaposition of a good character and an evil character with the same powers has been done so many times, and I don't think that this offered anything new to it. These sort of stories are always about how a main character, if they were evil, how would they act. But what I really did enjoy was the artwork. There are some very beautiful spreads of scenery. The characters themselves are done quite simply, but I do enjoy that as well. But the best part about this was all these lovely creepy monsters. There were so many different kinds of monsters and it was awesome. Art is always a huge part of my ratings, and I gave this one 3.5 stars on Goodreads. It's like 3 stars from the story and 4 stars from the art. Then I read Memoirs of Sherlock Holmes by Arthur Conan Doyle. This is a collection of Sherlock Holmes stories. You know the drill. Watson writes down the cases that Sherlock Holmes has solved. But sadly, I think this collection had a lot of weaker stories than the previous collection, The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. Some of these were pretty forgettable, but I did enjoy that we were introduced to Mycroft and that there was the final problem, which is of course a great story. 3 stars for this one. Then I read the novella The Lost Child of Lychford by Paul Cornell. This is a continuation to the novella The Witches of Lychford, which I really enjoyed. It's sort of a contemporary fantasy set in a small town with 3 witches as the main characters. In this one it's Christmas and the apparition of a small boy appears in Lizzie's church. Lizzie is one of the witches and also a priest. And they don't really know what this apparition is. Is it a ghost? Is it a vision? But it seems to be warning them of something dangerous that is going to happen. I think this sequel wasn't quite as good as the first one. It was a lot creepier, which I did enjoy, but also the plot was a bit more confusing than in the first one. I thought about giving this 4 stars, but since I gave the first one 4 stars and I clearly enjoyed that one better, I gave this one 3.5 stars. I think a big part of that might be that my favorite witch is the old grumpy woman called Judith, and she was in a much bigger role in the first book than in this one. Then I read The Forest of Memory by Mary Robinette Kowal, and this is also a novella. And this is set in the future. It's a science fiction story where people they are continuously connected to the cloud. They have their own AI interface and they are recording their memories and continuously uploading them to the cloud. So whenever they want, they can go back and look at their memories in vivid detail in video form. The main character, who is an antiques dealer, is kidnapped and goes off the grid. And weird stuff happens, but she has no way to prove this since she wasn't recording at the time, and she has no way of revisiting her own memories, and she has gotten so used to this that she is now doubting herself, doubting what she remembers and what really happened. So did it happen, and what did really happen? This is a very high concept story about memory. It was very dreamlike, but sadly it didn't do much for me. I never really felt connected to the story, even though I did like the technology of these people being able to relive their memories by just opening a video file. So the future memory tech was really interesting, but I didn't really connect with the story. And also this story is written as that the main character is writing it down to a client with an old typewriter. And of course, when you write with a typewriter, you make typos, and all the typos are left in this novella. And I found the typos to be quite distracting, to be honest. 3 stars for this. So all the 3 that I mentioned I read as ebooks on my Kindle, so they were things that I owned. And then I also read one short story, which is available online, and I will link it for you down below. And that was Red as Blood and White as Bone by Theodora Goss. And this is an original fairy tale. It tells of this kitchen maid who lives and works in a castle, and she lets in this mysterious woman secretly, so no one else knows that she's there. And the kitchen maid is very much convinced that she is a disguised princess because she has been reading a lot of fairy tales, and of course that's how things go in fairy tales. This is actually a historical fiction fairy tale, so this is set in our world in Eastern Europe. And I really enjoyed this. It's an original fairy tale, but it felt very old and traditional, which is a good thing. I really enjoy stuff like that. It was quite dark, like a lot of fairy tales are. And of course it's very goth with the red as blood and white as bone. So the red as blood is the princess's necklace made of rubies, and the white as bone is her bone comb. I was really taken in by the mysterious woman, and I love the dark tones of it, and the main character who really believes in fairy tales. And this one was a 4-star read for me. If you like original fairy tales that feel like older fairy tales, I recommend that you go and check it out. The link is down below, like I said. So that was the first part of my January wrap-up. As you can see, I read mostly novellas and short stories. I think in the second part I will have read a couple of actual novels as well. I hope you are having a great month. I will talk more about my January reads in the part 2, and I will see you later.